A question came up in the comments section, and I wish I was doing this live so I could just kind of answer these questions and interact with everybody. I do miss that about being in the classroom, but meanwhile, maybe once my schedule solidifies a little bit more than it is now, we'll be able to pull that off. But for now, we'll do it this way. This question is, the events of the flood are referenced often in the Bible, specifically about what was going on in the world before the flood. Do you have any resources or insight on who the sons of God are and what kinds of things were going on in the world? Well, this is taken primarily from chapter 6 of Genesis, right before the account of the flood. And I'll read just a little bit of this and then get a little deeper into the question and answer thing here. It came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to men, that daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he also is flesh, and nonetheless his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And so much so that the Lord was sorry he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And it goes on a little bit from there and then talks about the flood. Well, what was going on? There are quite a few sources from outside the Bible that can describe some things, but just from this passage alone, even just up to this passage, even in Scripture, we see Cain murdering Abel, Lamech killing somebody who just insulted him, and the description here, just the wickedness got worse and worse and worse. Whatever that looked like, it sounds like it was pretty bad. I don't know too many details, but it definitely sounds bad. But other part of the question is what a lot of people really find interesting, because it's just so mysterious, I guess. What does it mean the sons of God came into the daughters of men? Who were these sons of God? And in the text here, a lot of translations say giants. A lot of other translations say Nephilim. Nephilim is the word that some people translate as giants. The word itself may or may not mean giants. And it's not giant in the sense of jolly green giant, like, we stand and come up to the top of their toes or ankles or something. It's different than that. But who are these people? There are a few theories. I have my own opinion about it. This is not the type of thing where I would get overly defensive if people disagree with me. It's one of the type of thing that for me is fun to think about and look up and talk about and even debate about a little bit, but nothing that I would really go to the mat over. If I'm wrong, it's, I will have a good time laughing at my mistake. But here's my my take on this. Well, first, here are the most common views. One, when Cain murdered Abel, God confronted him and cast him out of the area there. And one of Cain's complaints was, God, if you send me out of here, I won't be safe. People will kill me. And, well, who are the people? Right? There was Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. And Cain murdered Abel. So there's just Adam, Eve, and Cain left. Who's going to murder him? His own parents. And they were right there, so if he left, he'd be safe from them. So who are the people? Well, one theory, and there's just so much speculation about this whole part of the Bible here, one theory is that there were other sons and daughters born to Adam and Eve, either before or after the fall. When God said to Eve, I will greatly increase your pain in childbirth, that implies that there was already pain in childbirth, which implies, in turn, that there was already childbirth. If there were children born before the fall, maybe they weren't actually impacted by the fall the way we all were, descended from Adam and Eve. And if that's the case, they would be most likely the sons of God, the people who were born before the fall, who didn't have that sinful nature. Well, they ended up sleeping with the daughters of men, those who were affected by the fall, and In doing so, perhaps that was their sin and they fell, and their descendants would be considered fallen, right? I don't. Some of this I'm making up as I go. Most of it, though, is one of the theories, and these sons of God were those people born before the fall. Another similar view is after Cain killed Abel, Adam and Eve gave birth to Seth. Eve, I guess, gave birth to Seth. Adam just had the fun part. But in doing that, then Seth sort of, in a sense, took Abel's place, but he was considered the good one, right? The one whose family line we follow through Scripture. And so he then and his descendants could be considered the sons of God, where the daughters of men would be the woman born from Cain's line, and they had children. But the thing is that doesn't really explain too much in both cases, whether it's the people born before the fall or descendants of Seth, because if the Nephilim are the people who come from that relationship, then the Nephilim are mentioned after the flood as well. There wouldn't be any more sons and daughters of Cain after the flood. They would have been wiped out in the flood because only Noah and his immediate family survived that, and they were descended directly from Seth. So I don't think it can be that because they exist after the flood. Another theory, and this has really some merit to it, another theory is that sons of God could actually refer to kings. And kings throughout history, on and off throughout history, would be considered divine beings or sons of the gods. And it could very well be that these kings went into, they married common women. Women who were not royalty and had children. But again, that doesn't explain why these people were giants. And there are some commentaries will point out that the word might not actually mean giant, and that sort of helps that it helps that theory in that the people, the resulting children, don't need to be giants grammatically, but in a lot of the passages that talk about these Nephilim, they're actually described as huge warriors. So if it's the kings marrying or sleeping with the common girls and having children, why would they just be this race of huge warriors? It just doesn't really make sense that way. So, I don't really buy into that view either. Most scholars do buy into that view, and most scholars would also say that calling them giants was just an exaggeration, and people did exaggerate. In this culture, it's just very common to exaggerate, so calling them giants could be exaggerating, but we're given certain details that make me think that it's not all exaggeration, right? So the view that I take, which may very well be wrong again, but it's the one that makes the most sense to me, the sons of God, the word God, by the way, in Hebrew is Elohim, which is literally gods, plural. It's lowercase G-O-D-S, right? Gods, plural. The Jewish people and the writers of Scripture refer to the Lord as Elohim in the sense of the way they explain it. It's the majestic plural, I think it's called. The one example that I hear often is Queen of England saying, "We are not amused," right? We meaning I. But when you're royalty, the singular, just you can't capture the glory of the king or queen in the singular. So how much more for God? So you use the plural form. I don't know that that's a great description of it, but God himself is referred to as Elohim or gods. So when you see God, the word God in Scripture, usually, almost always, it's the word Elohim in Hebrew, gods. Well, usually it's a reference directly to God. Sometimes translators may actually say God when it literally means gods, lowercase and plural. It could be the sons of gods went into the daughters of men. And if that's the case, it probably is a reference to angels and even more likely fallen angels or demons. Demons are just fallen angels that rebelled against the Lord. So if that's the case, now there are, a lot of people will oppose this view and say that angels can't sleep with human beings. But angels all through Scripture take the form of human beings. And they have fingers, they have noses. Why not all the other necessary parts? So, I don't see any problem with that if you interpret the Bible that way. If it's not just figurative language and it's based on something that really happened, I would say that. There are a lot of people who just don't believe there are angels and demons, and that's fine. Personally, I do. We'll get to that in a whole other session. But my take on this, though, is that the Nephilim are these people who come from this sexual interaction between angels or fallen angels, right, demons, and human women. And the children that result from that would explain why it seems to be this race of these huge, strong, mighty warriors, giants. Goliath, from David and Goliath, we'll talk about that quite a ways down the road here. But when we talk about Goliath, the way he's described, the text actually says that he was 9 feet tall. We get a description. And, 9 feet tall, that's not Jolly Green Giant, right? It's not this, person whose head is up in the clouds. But it's a huge person. And Goliath is way down the line as far as descendants of these Nephilim. Also, it would explain why these Nephilim were not wiped out at the flood. The Nephilim existed before the flood, and they're mentioned again after the flood. So the books of Joshua and Judges both mention the Nephilim. In the book of Numbers, the people go into the land of Canaan, and they're spying out the land, and they say, "We saw the Nephilim," and in parentheses, the sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim. And who are the sons of Anak? Well, Anak is a person, human being, but it appears that he was from among these Nephilim. The sons of Anak become then a synonym for the Nephilim, these giants, the Anakites, they're called. So the sons of Anak are the Anakites. So if you're going to search Scripture to study these Nephilim, don't just look for Nephilim. Look for Anak, A-N-A-K, and Anakites, A-N-A-K-I-T-E-S, and look into them. They're described as these huge warriors, and the people go into the land to spy it out. God's going to tell them, go in and take the land, and the people come back saying, we can't do it. They're huge warriors. We're like grasshoppers to them. They're massive, right? So, that would explain these physical descriptions of the Anakites or the Nephilim, if they are not just descendants of human beings. All right, so that's a long, drawn-out answer to a question that nobody really knows for sure the correct answer to. I hope it's helpful to you, and feel free, everybody, feel free to ask questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. I would love to get some conversation going too, hear all your views on this. I don't want it to just be me as the answer person here. I certainly don't have all the right answers. I like to pretend I do, but I would love discussion about it. So thank you all, and I look forward to more.